is the founder, CEO, and visionary of Authentic Brand, a community of fractional CMOs. Oh, excuse me, popping up there. Thanks. Fractional CMOs who help growing businesses overcome random acts of marketing and confidently take the next right step to build revenue. Jennifer is also the founder and host of the Integrator Community, a virtual monthly peer forum for integrators of EOS businesses. Please all send your integrators to that community. And so it's powerful stuff. The Integrator Community is proud to partner with the Visionary Forum, and together we're grateful to be building this community for our visionary leaders and their teams. So today, Jennifer will share lessons she has learned on the topic of building a strong and authentic personal brand. So with no further ado, Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ladies and gents, I'm so delighted to be with you today. I'm a happy member of the Visionary Forum and a partner through our Integrator community. And today, I'm really happy to share just some personal insights on building a strong personal brand. And I'm going to try to tailor this talk particularly to that visionary role and seat that you all sit in and what it means to balance and navigate your personal and your business brand and the supporting roles they have with each other. But really quickly, make sure my slides advance. Quick introduction to me. My husband, Ryan, and I have been married 24 years. We live in Minneapolis, Minnesota with our 3 children. Our daughter, Evelyn, is going to start college in the fall, and I don't know how that is happening already, but here we go. It's a wild ride. So a little bit about me. That's a good way to kick off personal brand, is sharing a little bit. To help you understand kind of the context by which, I'm cheating a little bit on my slides here by not going into presenter mode so I can see your faces. So hopefully that'll work for me. We've already talked about authentic brand. Thank you for that intro, Ken. I am not here today to talk about authentic brand services. Though our company, my company is a marketing fractional CMO firm. What I'm sharing with you today is not something we do for our clients. It's something I have learned myself personally, and it does factor into the role that I play. I am the visionary integrator for Authentic Brand. And so I'm going to take my personal learnings and share them with you. So without any further ado, I wanted to start with why. Why does this matter? And I wanted to share with you 2 very recent examples of how my personal brand is connecting to support what's important, what my purpose is. So first of all, this first example is something near and dear to my heart, and that's to make an impact and to inspire, regardless of the services my business provides. And this sweet note showed up in my inbox in LinkedIn just recently with somebody I don't even know saying, "You're making a difference in my life." And it makes my heart full. And that makes my heart full in return. And so that's the power of the personal brand, the authentic brand I'm going to share with you today. This is another example of the purpose for why a personal brand, in addition to your corporate brand, matters. Just last month, or late in February, I received this LinkedIn note from somebody I didn't know, a second degree connection, who had seen a really silly post I put on LinkedIn that I'll share with you later. Had nothing to do with our business, but through seeing that post, she explored my business, discovered the fractional CMO was a thing that she probably needed, and they're our new client. So personal brand can actually lead to new business. It's not usually the most direct path as this example, but it all works together toward what you're building as business leaders. So a little bit about my background that informs the context from which I'm speaking. So I spent the bulk of my career in sales and marketing roles and leadership roles for fast-growing entrepreneurial professional services firms. And so for a big chunk of my career, I was the head of sales and the head of marketing inside of another person's company. And it was my job to promote those services and that brand. And I actually spent 13 years with a fast-growing entrepreneurial firm that ran on EOS. But my role in the company was promoting that business brand and the others in the business. And when I recognized that it was time for me to step out into a new role, I wasn't starting my own business yet, but I realized that my personal brand really had ceased to exist. I simply was part of the business brand story. You're with a company for 13 years, your brand becomes synonymous with that brand. And I knew that in order to elevate myself from 13 years at one company into the next move, I needed to build a personal brand and a story about myself, in addition to the story about the business I had been part of growing. So I started, that was, in my early 30s, to script how I would plan for how to build my personal brand. And then I followed that formula, which is what I'm packaging up to share with you today, and what I've learned as my role then evolved from separating my personal brand from that business brand to moving forward in new roles in my career to what the catalyst event that launched Authentic Brand for me, which was an unplanned exit from my last corporate role. New investors came in, executive roles were cut. I was cut loose for the first time in my career with the chance to either go find another job or nurture my entrepreneurial seed in my heart. And I chose the latter. And that was the moment 4 years ago when I started Authentic Brand that I started learning what it meant to use a personal brand to start seeding business brand, but then how they need to be separated and supportive of each other over time. So that's just a little context. So the beginning of my story I just shared with you, when I was working for this wonderful EOS powered entrepreneurial business called Magnet 360 here in Minneapolis, my brand was synonymous with my employer's brand. While I was working for them early in my career, along the way was the emergence of social media. LinkedIn became a platform while I was employed in that business, Twitter and Facebook. And as a marketer myself and a salesperson by trade, I was exploring those platforms and what does it mean to leverage my voice in those platforms. But I was only doing that as a representative of that business and that brand. That was my story. I now can look back on that and see that I was really limiting my personal brand. That and if you're in a position where the only voice you're bringing to the world through your social channels or networking channels is about your business, don't feel like I'm heaping guilt or condemnation on you. Like, wonderful place to start. If you're showing up and telling your business story, wonderful. As the visionary, I hope that you are. You should be the chief evangelist of your business story. But I want to invite you to think more broadly than that. So today I'm going to share with you a 3-dimensional evolution of personal brand. And I'll recap it at the end so you can see all the 3 dimensions side by side. So this is the first dimension. You might be living here, and that's wonderful. Or you might be that wonderful, beautiful visionary who has said, I just want to be under the radar. I'm going to leave it to my sales and marketing people to be the faces of the business. I don't want to be known. Well, I want to invite you to think differently, because your personal brand has amazing influence and impact, and you have something of value to share with the world. And it doesn't even have to be about what your business does. All right, so evolving past this limited personal brand is this idea of a dimensional personal brand. When I made the commitment so many years ago that if I was going to get another job, a meaningful executive role outside of a company I'd been with for 13 years, I better have a story. I made a checklist of what I would need to do. I would need to join an association, a nonprofit, and be a leader on a board outside of my business. I would need to be more proactive about volunteering in my communities of influence. I would need to win an award and some accolades to attach to my personal name, not just winning all the awards for the business. So I gave myself 2 years to do that. I had a 2-year plan to bolster my business, my personal brand, secure speaking engagements that had nothing to do with my company, but had to do with my expertise as a sales and marketing leader. And I went to work and I did all of that. And it was hugely influential in propelling my career and stepping out of that job. But to do that, I didn't realize it because I didn't have this model built out yet. But to do that meant I had to start showing up as something more than my business, but I still had to represent my employer's brand really well. But I had to be a brand that also brought people into a world where they could know me personally, Jennifer Zick, not just my business. And that meant figuring out what else in my industry I could connect myself to, what related topics might get me inside of buckets of relationships and influence that help me expand from just this little community I was part of. Connecting with and talking about and sharing with the people I admire, my business network, my personal network, hobbies and passions. So if you spend much time on LinkedIn, you probably can see where people show up in these ways and kind of connect the dots around who they are, as well as the businesses they represent. And the individuals that do this well are hugely valuable employees. Like, you want these employees in your company because they're not just representing the last company they came from, now shifting to representing your company. They build networks of influence and trust because they're letting people in on who they are. Now, the next and third dimension of building a personal and authentic brand goes even deeper. And this is where you move into bigger and deeper places of vulnerability. And I'll talk about kind of what goes into this. And I'm not suggesting that all of you need to put it all out there. I certainly don't put it all out there. This is a practice that comes with really important levels of filtering and social responsibility and maturity, and knowing the difference between what your Facebook network wants to hear from you and what because when I post business content on Facebook, my mom and my mother-in-law love to chime in on it. And I'm not sure that that's helping my brand a lot, right? So, just being thoughtful about which audiences where are going to relate to the pieces of your brand that are going to show up. But this is a completely different level. And I admit that it wasn't until I was the owner of my own business and I felt I had the freedom to really show up fully as myself that I started to move my personal brand into this dimension. And in doing so, my network has grown so much deeper, so much richer, and so much higher quality as we really find the people around us that we can trust. So, really ultimately, what is authenticity? Authentic brand, it's the name of my business. Authenticity is really important to me as a value, but it is really the combination of integrity, transparency, and vulnerability. So again, you don't have to bring all of yourself all day, all the time to every interaction. But when you think about how can I show up with my integrity always fully intact, with the right and appropriate level of transparency for the audience, and the level of vulnerability that I'm ready and willing to offer to the world, that's what builds authenticity in your personal brand. So integrity is as simple as living your values. And I'm talking to a bunch of, EOS business leaders, and we know values. They're front and center in everything that we do. And your business values, you probably played a huge role in shaping what those values are. But I would invite you to also think differently and take a separate, clarity break around what are your personal values? What will you commit to always doing in every interaction? And what will you commit to never doing in any interaction? And how does that influence how and where you show up and what you say and how you respond? How does that shape? First, most important rule of building personal brand is be true to yourself. Some people can get by in building brand that's not really authentically them, but eventually it's going to show up. A facade eventually erodes. And when we see something that's real and authentic, we know it. We just know it. And authenticity, guided by values that help you make decisions to keep showing up consistently over time. Trust is not built because you have one vulnerable post that you've shared with the world. Trust is built by consistently showing up with your values time and time and time and time again. It's the consistency of it. So when you let your values guide you, you're going to be building something that's sustainable. You don't have to guess how your voice is going to show up in the world. Transparency is simply letting other people in. It doesn't have to be all the way in, but a little bit in. And I'll share some examples of what that has looked like for me. And as I'm sharing all of this, no, it's shaped by my own journey. So I invite you to take the pieces of it that you feel fit for you and discard the rest. Just make this your own. You don't have to do things my way. So this is another fun little bubble model. And probably the people on our teams look at us and think we don't feel this, but I look at all of you as my peers and I know you do, because I do. I mean, there was never anything more scary than in launching my own business the first time I published a blog post. I'm a marketer and a communications major and an English minor, and writing and speaking comes easily for me. But my whole career was about promoting other people's brands and other people's stories, and I was just the mouthpiece. The minute that I had to have a thought of my own and actually put it out to the world was the scariest moment ever, because I only know this much, and it seems to me like everybody else knows so much, and all these polished professional people that have their books written and their webinar series already developed, all of that. But the truth is that you do have something of value to bring to the world, and everybody else has their own part of value to add to that. So just a reminder that everyone from the top of the organization on down feels at times like they're a big, huge fake, and we're just minutes away from being exposed. But recognize you do have something of value to share, and nobody else has your exact life experience and perspective, and it's valuable. And being brave in building your personal brand and putting things out there and taking those next scary steps, it's like bravery doesn't mean that you're not going to feel scared and intimidated, but you do it anyway. And really, like, what is the worst thing that can happen? A caveat on this is that we've all seen, particularly in the last year, that stupid social posting really can get you canceled. So, I mean, be wise, of course. But living within your values and being true to yourself, the worst that can happen is maybe some people don't agree. And that's okay, because you'll be attracting communities of people that are strong allies of what you're building. So it's okay. You don't have to be all things to all people. And you might be wondering, like, what in the world would I even share, right? And the default, the easy thing and important still is like, if your business exists, your business should be creating content. And if your business creates content, you as its leader should be sharing it with the world. That's kind of baseline. But here's what I've learned, and I consider myself just a big experiment. What I've learned is when I share content, whether I've written it or someone on my team has written it, I get some likes. I get some views. It's important. It reinforces that we do know what we're talking about and they can trust the services that we provide. But where I get really good engagement, where I get really meaningful conversation and really thoughtful relationship building fodder is when I share just real life, when I share moments and glimpses into our culture, glimpses into me as a leader and some of my journeys and celebrations and struggles. My most recent silly dancing, like this was me. This was a picture one of my staff took. Actually, it was a clip from a video one of my staff took of us ringing the bell with a new client deal. And it was the most ridiculous picture. I'm like, I need to share this with LinkedIn and just like self-depreciate and just laugh about this. These are the moments that happen inside of my business, right? This is how culture is lived out. And had over 30,000 views on that. And this was the picture that got liked by people who knew the person who became our new client. Like, I couldn't have told you that was going to turn into revenue at all. I was just simply sharing a moment. So these are some other examples of stupid moments of me up at my cabin, like I'm not even near the bell to ring and my hair's not done, but I don't care. Like, I'm willing to be vulnerable and authentic. I own my business. I feel really free to like kind of bring my full self to the world. And I'm learning that the more I do that, the less I worry about things being perfect, polished, edited, fine, like the more I just put what's on my heart to put out to the world, the more meaningful engagement I receive in return. Oh, these are just a few other moments, like the first day we got our logo on the wall in our new office and just celebrations. The world, especially after all the trauma and drama we've all survived in the last year, the world is hungry for like wholesome, happy moments. So if you've got them, please share them because people just want some joy. They want to celebrate with you. People really do care. They want to applaud. Okay, so bringing your vulnerable self. And Ken, this is where I'm saying I'm not keeping track of my own time. So you time track me if you need to. Yeah. I'm almost done.
Let it rip in about 2.5 minutes if you can.
Oh, okay, good. All right, this is just another example of me learning along the way about vulnerability. This was, over a year ago now, and I was invited during live events back then, way back then when we got together and sat near each other. I was invited to come speak at an entrepreneurial event, and I just really felt compelled that day, like, if I'm asked questions that ask for personal, deep, real things, I'm going to answer like fully. I'm going to show up fully as myself. And that conversation for entrepreneurs that started on the topic of sales and marketing went all over the place. I talked about marriage, parenting, faith, all of these things that go into being a visionary entrepreneur and building a business. And I just went in unedited and raw and myself. And that I have never in my life received so many unsolicited follow-ups from attendees to that meeting. I mean, there were probably 100 people in the room, and I had, at least a dozen people who came and talked to me after the event and another 20 who messaged me after. And this is a sampling of the messaging I got from that one event, just saying, thanks for allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Thanks for talking about failure. Thanks for being real, right? And it was so affirming for me, like, it felt a little scary that morning when I felt like I need to really show up real, unscripted. But that's what the world wants. It really is what the world wants. And when you, as the visionary leader of your business, can show up living within your values, transparently, appropriately, vulnerable, and real, it builds trust in who you are as a human. And that builds trust within your business brand as well. So down to the brass tacks, how do you do this? How do you start? If you're kind of in a limiting brand or you're dimensional, you want to move toward more authentic, it's one interaction at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out. Like me, every move that I make, I learn something from it. I learn what's working. I learn how to continue to shape the way that my personal brand grows. But here are some things you can ask yourself. What's my purpose? I shared with you on the front end of this presentation. My purpose is to build my business, And my purpose is to inspire and to connect with other humans. What am I passionate about? What are my gifts? How can I help? That EOS help first value. It has to start with helping and meaning it, not asking and taking. Anybody who is building a personal brand that is out there for the purpose of personal gain, it's very evident. How do I live out my values? Your values don't have to be the same as mine. So long as you live them consistently, that's what's going to build trust, right? How and where will I engage? Where are my communities? For me personally, my business community is primarily LinkedIn. And I'm doing less and less over time with the other channels personally. That doesn't mean my business brand won't, but for me, that's where my people are. And then what skills or knowledge will I need to be effective? There's a lot of training. This is one example of some learning you can do. Other learnings might take you more into like literally how to use a certain platform, how to post video or photos or other kinds of content so that people see it, how to tag or hashtag so that your content is elevated. There's a lot to learn, but you don't have to know it all to start. So finally, a side-by-side view of the 3 different models of personal brand, from just what I do to where I'm engaged to who I really am. So I would invite you to not get overwhelmed if you're not all the way over to the right, but to think about maybe one more bubble you'd like to move into and explore how that could fit, or explore the frequency of which you're engaging with your networks. And this can even just happen right inside your own business. If you're not a prolific external sharer, think about how do you start to show up more authentically, even within the walls or virtual walls of your business, and see what you learn. So with that, I did tell Ken and team that I gave a much deeper presentation on this topic earlier this year as the virtual keynote for the Twin Cities Startup Week. And that included 2 topics, both personal brand and trust equity. As business founders who care about like moving beyond your personal network or your salesperson's network into deeper communities of influence and trust, particularly for businesses like ours that are very word of mouth referral and trust based, you probably want to learn about that topic as well. And I do have it's about a 43-minute total recorded presentation from those 2 topics combined. So you could revisit this topic and then learn about the other topic as well if you're interested. And I'll equip Grace with the link to that YouTube so she can share it out after the fact. So awesome. I would love to hear from you. I would love to learn if there was anything new that you heard from me today. And that's all I've got.
All right. Good stuff. If you could just a round of applause for Jennifer Zick, please. Good job, Jennifer. That was awesome. So if you could, do you mind hitting stop share for me? Thanks.
Yep.
I can see you all. We got time for a couple good questions here. And so I hope you give her a tough one. Really challenge this expert, right? And so bring something to the table for us. Put your hand in the camera if you got a question, and we'll see where it goes. I got 2, Ali and Doug. Ali, go ahead, let it rip. What do you got?
Just want to make sure first, can you guys hear me okay? Because I disconnected my mic. Good. All right. So I actually don't have a question yet. I just want to tell you how awesome that was. And when you put a framework and a structure around thoughts versus just describing them, and you actually have this framework to think about, it is so impactful. And I took lots of notes, and I just want to compliment you. Did an amazing job. I love it. And if there's a deep dive version of this, wow, because that was awesome in and of itself. I felt like I just got a keynote.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Nice. I feel the love. I love that. That's good. Thanks, Ali. Doug, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so first off, I really appreciate what you presented. It's something that I've been thinking about actually for like the last year and a half on how to kind of separate myself from the business, from a personal brand standpoint. So one of the questions I had for you, it sounds like you use LinkedIn a lot. Is that your primary, or do you actually focus on your brand across all social mediums and so forth?
Yeah, LinkedIn is my primary as it relates to the intersection of my professional life and a little bit of my personal interest. I am on Facebook and would be happy to be a friend to any of you, but my Facebook sharing has a lot more to do with like my family, my hobbies, my faith, like that side of me, and is more of like my broad friend community, many of whom are not at all my business community, if that makes sense. So when I think about personal brand for how my business exists, LinkedIn is definitely the primary. There was time years ago that I spent a lot of time on Twitter, but I have for myself decided that trying to manage 2 platforms and communities of connections well is difficult. And I don't have time for that in terms of, sitting in the seats I sit in my business. So I'm focusing kind of all in on LinkedIn.
Good. You got Doug, do you have a follow-up or you need anything else out of that real quick before I go to Stuart?
No, I'm good on that. Thanks.
Good. Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Stuart, what do you have?
Hey, Jennifer, appreciate the presentation. I just had one curiosity, really. I think as I hear you outline your methodologies around building a personal brand, it employs a lot of what I would consider to be extrovert activities in putting it out there and showing up. And it's been my experience that a lot of visionaries also introvert and perhaps aren't as confident in being and so public. So I'm curious what experience that you've had or what advice you might have for those of us that aren't quite as comfortable with putting it out there.
Well, 2 things. First, you can be encouraged that as an introvert using digital mediums, you don't have to even be in a crowd. So you don't have to exhaust your energy shaking hands or even talking to people. And you can take as much time as you need to thoughtfully craft whatever message it is that you want to share. But I would also encourage you to not overthink this, and don't try to plan so far that you have a plan and a program that makes you feel exhausted because you're not an extrovert. Like, decide to do one thing a week and learn from it. See what you learn. And then do the next thing based on what you learn. Even in the role that we have as fractional CMOs with our clients, we do annual planning, we do quarterly workshopping, which is quarterly planning and rock setting. But then we give ourselves, with our weekly level 10s and cadence meetings, time to look at what the insights tell us and modify the plan, right? So don't overthink it too much and give yourself the grace to do it in the way that's true to you. You don't have to look at all like an extrovert or somebody in sales and marketing.
Good.
Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, I have to stop there just for the sake of time. And Jennifer, thanks so much. So timely. I think it's so timely for so many people too. And so I think you're really helping us navigate at a special time. And so just super stuff. And so it's so valuable. All right. I'm going to dive into next steps here. We're going to move into, it's always a dance when you facilitate, by the way. This is a dance. And so we're going to shave a little bit of time off of IDS, but not much, because I do want to lend some time into ahas at the end of this. And so let me dive into what you're in for before breakout rooms. And so we're going to go into breakout rooms, and this is truly where leaders learn and lead with the best. And so collectively, you're going to learn and lead. And so be prepared with your purpose, cause, or passion statement. So wink, wink. If you don't have it, go get it quickly. As soon as you go into the breakout room, do 2 things. Designate a facilitator and designate a timekeeper. A lot of you know if I land in your room, I like to be the facilitator. So you'll get lucky if that's the case. But pick a facilitator and pick a timekeeper. And then I want you to answer 3 questions. Number 1 is, what is your name and company or companies? Number 2, what is your passion or purpose, cause, or passion statement? And number 3, just say your top issue in 1 sentence. It's important. It's not a story, but instead just 1 sentence. Issues can be anything, personal, professional. I mean, anything goes here. This is a trusted community here. When stating your issue, please have your issue in 1 sentence, and then keep discussions when you're solving 1 issue. Keep it to 5 minutes per issue, best you can. Important that you avoid theory in the beginning of it. So in other words, speak from experience when solving the issue. If there's no experience in the breakout room, then move to theory next. And then be prepared to bring back your ahas. I'll leave you with this. Confidentiality is key. So everything in these breakout rooms, please, is confidential unless you are permitted otherwise. And how about having a little fun? Maybe be your authentic selves in these breakout rooms, right? Courtesy of Jennifer Zick there. So Grace, if you're ready to go, you can send us.